Here's a great question from one of our systemologists in our systemologist community around employing a systems champion. There's actually a series of questions that I'd like to discuss to kind of help to stimulate some of the discussion and get you thinking along the right track. So the first thing is, we probably need to answer the question what a systems champion is. This is an internal staff member employed directly inside the business to spearhead the initiative of building up a systems culture. Oftentimes, when an organization doesn't have great process in place, the first thing that systems champion is really doing is capturing current best practice. They're making it easy for team members, knowledgeable team members, to get that IP out of their head, get it organized and accessible for the rest of the team, so you can start to make some of those tasks transferable and really repeatable. So there is quite a bit of documentation work that happens up front. It's also about building the culture and getting the team on board and keeping it front and center. While the business owner really initiates this and leads it, it's the systems champion that rolls up their sleeve and gets it done and helps to improve team member efficiency by capturing these processes. So there is quite a bit of support and training, and it's a continuous role, and oftentimes depending on what's needed inside the organization, because it can have quite a broad scope. Obviously, following the systemology process, you first start off with the critical client flow and then move into minimum viable systems, but it will depend on what's going on inside the business. The short version is, though, they're there to build a systems-driven culture inside the organization. Now, the question that Jenny was asking is around what is the pay rate and scale that you would suggest that's appropriate. Now, this can be a little bit of a how long is a piece of string, because oftentimes pay rates and things like that depend on where your business is located and what talent you'll be accessing to do this particular role. That said, though, one of the common elements of successful systems champions I see, or ones that really succeed in that role, are often the apprentice effectively in that particular industry. So it's someone who may have gone through and done some university training or doing some sort of apprenticeship to understand the technical aspect of the business. So it's the junior accountant, it's the junior mechanic, it's the junior tradesperson, the junior designer. Depending on what the business is in, it's that junior person. They can be great for that role because they're very hungry to learn. They have an understanding of the technical side of the work, and this will help to expose them to what it takes to really run the business, the other aspects of the business. So when you think about that, you can think in terms of, well, what is an apprenticeship wage? And that will give you some guidance around the pay scale. So thinking in your particular industry and your location. Obviously, the more junior a team member, the more direction that they're going to need. So that's why you might look at something like the Business Systems Accelerator, which is the training for the systems champion to really guide and point them in the right direction. Then you can go kind of next level up. You might be thinking about maybe a return to work mum or dad that has had some experience maybe in corporate life, and they, who knows, might have had some exposure to other process methodologies and things like that. Oftentimes those return to work mum or dads will be more flexible on their pay rate because they need the flexibility with their work as well, with a young family for the return to work parents. So that's another avenue you can explore. And again, thinking in terms of your location can help to kind of uncover what would be appropriate rate. The other way is you can look offshore. If you are going to go offshore to try and get something more cost effective, you obviously need skills on managing virtual teams. Generally, my suggestion is there, especially if you're getting started, you're wanting to pay a higher amount to get a higher quality offshore team member rather than going for a very junior person. The general idea is the more skilled someone is, the more you're going to need to pay that person to attract that talent. But what you're hoping is the more skilled they are, the less input that they're going to require from you. But someone less skilled might require some more oversight. As a general rule, like if I was to, really pressed here about what is a rate, anywhere from $10 an hour all the way up to $40 an hour, again, depending on the location and the type of person and the skills and things like that. So unfortunately, I can't give an exact number here because there's a little bit of a it depends situation. So then we kind of move down here, and the question is more around the job description. We've obviously shared a job description. I explained a little bit about the systems champion earlier. And if you're a BSA member or a systemologist, you'll have access to that particular position description. But if we dig in a little bit more, thinking around OKRs, KPIs, those sorts of things, who does the person report to and why? Should they sit on the leadership team? And things around scorecards, like actual measurables. So kind of answer a few of those. Firstly, around who should the person report to. So the more work that we do, we're really carving out this whole systems space to be a department in itself. Just like you might have HR and finance and sales and marketing, we believe that the systems area needs its own department, and effectively the systems champion therefore is the department head. Now, depending on the organization and who your department heads currently report to, that systems champion might be reporting directly to the business owner, or if you've got an integrator or some sort of manager, potentially the operations manager, they might be reporting to that person. Now, I've made the case that effective business systems development is the master skill of business. It's this idea of how do we take something that's done, extract it out of the head of that knowledgeable team member, or have a new system or process developed, and then make it transferable so someone else can take over that task, do it on a repeated basis and deliver it to a great standard. Like that, when you think about it, is the master skill. It touches all aspects of the business, and also one of the reasons why I think reporting to the business owner and potentially the operations manager is key. Because especially for the business owner, if we can make it possible for them to get things out of their head and document it and hand it off to someone that can then execute on that task, that makes the business owner most effective. Because then they can just get more things done. Oftentimes the business owner has a lot of ideas, but they struggle with the implementation. As systems champion really is a critical part in the application of that. So again, that's whom they might report to. That said, though, some business owners aren't also great to have direct reports or people that go to them because they're quite busy. So that's, again, depending on the size of the organization, you might also consider the operations person. Operations person also oftentimes gets systems, so they can help to prioritize it and set targets and those sorts of things. As far as should they sit on the leadership team, I'm obviously a little bit biased. My short answer is yes. I think they should be across it because they will work with other department heads, especially when you go through the minimum viable systems process and thinking about each of the different departments. They'll be stepping into the department, working with the department head to capture some of these essential systems and organize them. So I think them being aware of what's going on in the organization is important. It will also help them to prioritize, what things are important to get documented and where are challenges happening, and think about how do we solve this at the systems level, which really speaks to one of the core responsibilities of this role, which is to help to build a systems culture. Now, I'll kind of speak to a little bit about some KPIs and scorecards and things like that. I'm going to talk just maybe a little bit more generally because it will depend on how new this initiative is for the business. If you've got more established process in place, at that point in time, there are different outcomes that you'll be looking to achieve when it comes to improvement of systems. And that's also when some of the other methodologies really can step in, some of the Lean and Six Sigma and things like that, which is process improvement. But the whole idea of systemology, and particularly the systems champion role, is to spearhead this from the start. So early on, what are some different metrics and things that you can monitor? Well, it's things like how many systems may have been documented for that particular month or period, or depending over what time frame you're recording that on the scorecard. It might be how many particular systems were reviewed and updated, like existing systems? What is the average time it takes to document a particular system? How long, like what is the average time for a system from initial request to be completed? As in, like, what's the average turnaround? You can have other metrics in there, which is, number of sessions for that systems champion for meeting with knowledgeable workers, or the number of sessions that the systems champion has had from a training session perspective to try and bring team members up to speed. The other one I really like, and it's probably a little bit more broad, but it's how many activities. You might come up with a metric here where you're saying you want that systems champion to shine a light on like team members exhibiting the correct behavior and applying systems and systems thinking inside the organization. And maybe you want the systems champion to, the metric is we want them to do that 8 times a month. So then it becomes the job of the systems champion to keep an eye out for team members who are following process, documenting process, improving process, and make a little video on that and share it with the rest of the team. So you really start to encourage the behavior that you're looking for. So again, there are just a handful of ideas on what you might look at. Part of it will depend on the current goals and objectives of the organization. Successful completion of the minimum viable systems or the critical client flow, or there's some early tasks and things you'll want the systems champion to get into place, things like developing the system for creating systems for the organization. So there's some goals in there as well. Hopefully that gives you some further ideas on where you might start, and then this would be a discussion with the leadership team to really identify what would be suitable for your organization. And then lastly, thinking about, maybe a bit later on, once the systems champion role is more established, there might be additional things that you might want to monitor, things around actual improvements to systems, because the final stage of systemology is the optimize phase, where you're looking for, well, how much improvement has the systems champion been able to achieve by re-engineering systems, or perhaps that's looking at the error rate and what the reduction in that error rate of a particular system might be. Again, it will depend on the organization. You might look at how compliance of systems and successful sort of completions of systems. There's a range of different things at that point in time. But hopefully, that kind of gives you some broad brushstrokes and some things to think about when it comes to the systems champion role.